Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday, and this is the Right Guys podcast, where we point out that Joe Biden is playing the fiddle as he watches the world burn. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Max McGuire, here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. Lots to discuss today.
Yes.
Always fun when we're preparing for a show and we see that the United States has begun airstrikes against a country that Congress has not declared war against. That's always fun.
Again, I'm sorry.
I feel like that's something unique to our generation. And we're in the same generation, right? Do you consider yourself a millennial?
No, I'm Gen Xer, technically.
I'm a millennial, so we're different generations.
Are you really? Wow. Yeah. I'm waiting for the UN car to roll up and tell us it's time to get out of your house and completely revolt. So, oh my gosh.
Well, this is not something that the baby boomers grew up with. The idea that the president could just bomb another country and everyone says okay and just goes about their business. But that's the world we live in. We got attacked on 9/11, and apparently the only way to respond is to give the president the power to respond to anything without congressional approval, because all of these things base their authorization for the use of military force on the idea that Al-Qaeda attacked the World Trade Center, Twin Towers.
You know what's crazy is that strike. You know, they were like, you better not be here on this day. It might be coming. You don't know. You better leave. God, this is just gonna be bad news. Well, Joe Biden's hair is all weird too, but he's got people for that. If it's the same Joe Biden, I see.
You see the clip? You see the clip? Ooh, you see the clip of him in a diner telling people to vote for Trump? That was pretty wild.
You're kidding. Like, that would be the juiciest morsel of the weekend, right?
It happened.
You're gonna vote for Trump?
Happened.
What?
It was. I thought it had to be fake.
Yeah, right. I mean, with all the deep fakes out there these days.
Yeah.
I'll
download it though. Hold on.
Yeah, do it, because I want to see this one. Yeah, because he was at that diner
in Michigan.
It was, and then it smelled like the time that he was in Philly, right? And he was in that diner, and that guy he ignored him, or did he say like F Joe Biden?
Another guy ignored him. Another guy did ignore him, which is always fun.
Right.
That doesn't happen with Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't enter a room and people not notice.
Yeah, he enters the room and they're there waiting for him, right? They're lining up down the block to see if they can't get
here's the clip.
Dude.
Here's the clip. Let's see if we can hear it. There's a little bit of sound background noise. Did you hear it?
Vote Trump.
Vote for Trump. Very weird. It's almost like someone told him, "I don't support you. I'm a conservative." And like the way he gets out of that situation is, vote for Trump.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's still not a.
No,
it's still not good.
But
then again,
follows you forever.
Then again, Biden's DOJ has made a policy that if you do anything else, it's a civil rights violation. Like, because remember you had the people with the memes on the fake days to go to the polls saying Donald Trump supporters vote this day, Hillary Clinton supporters vote the other day, telling them not to vote or encouraging them not to vote, according to the DOJ, is a deprivation of rights these days. So I guess the only thing you legally can do is tell them to vote for your opponent. That's how weird this whole thing is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, happy second month of the year already.
Yeah.
It's
and
juicy.
Listen, those people have it good. I mean, in grand scheme of things, they're not getting their ass kicked by illegal aliens on the streets.
Yeah.
They're not being thrown in prison. They're not. So, I mean, that diner in Michigan might be the safest place to be right now. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a topic that we've discussed before, but it is the growing and ever galvanizing difference in the DOJ, FBI, Biden administration's policies on who deserves to be prosecuted and who deserves to be let off the hook. What kind of crimes deserve to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and what kind of crimes can be forgiven and just ignored.
Well, like a laptop full of kiddie porn?
Yeah.
Or like a bunch of payments from China for work not performed? I mean, Where do people sign up for this stuff?
Yeah. Versus a victimless crime in Trump saying that he committed fraud. How do you defraud a bank that gets paid back on the terms of the loan with interest? How is that fraud? But
it makes a pretty little penny. Or you take somebody to court for defamation and never meet them, maybe, allegedly. I don't know. I mean, that was really crazy. $88 million for someone claims to never have met. Like anybody can start coming forward now and say, hey, you know what? I remember back in the day he touched me in the blah, blah, blah.
But I don't know the date. I don't know the year. I don't know the season.
Yeah, and some of the evidence indicates she knew the dress she was wearing, but the dress hadn't been
invented yet.
It hadn't been invented. It's like,
for any of us, if you tried to enter that kind of evidence, it would throughout the whole thing, right? There's a legal concept. It's I believe it's falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus, which is if it's false in one, it's false in all. And that if they catch you in a lie, it's reasonable to presume that there's lots of lies in there.
Sure.
So yeah, if you make a very specific claim and you start getting it wrong, you don't get the deference of being believed for everything else.
Right.
But no, not apparently, especially not if your last name is Trump.
Yeah, they can't get rid of him, so they're trying to give him the financial death sentence, right? I mean, they're going to try to use the justice system to go to war and make him spend every single dollar, right? I mean, look, if they can't get rid of you, they're gonna bankrupt you, right? Or if they can't do that, then the next step. I mean, they're at the very end of that.
Yeah,
that whole cycle of trying to get rid of him, right? Right before an election, suddenly you don't have one of the candidates around. It's with the crazies out there, it's not off the table, right? It's just not, and I hope that doesn't happen because I want to vote for Trump. I really do. I don't want the alternative at all.
I think that's the only reason why Nikki Haley's still in this race. I was talking to my grandparents yesterday. They're like, why is she still in the race? Why is she still in the race? And I said, it's because in the off chance that the Supreme Court says Trump can't be on the ballot, she could coast to the nomination, because at that point, the question for the RNC is, do you nominate someone who actually received votes, or do you nominate someone who never received votes? And I think it's all bad. It's not anything that we want at all, right? But in terms of civil war within the party, right, tearing itself apart, the idea of giving the nomination to someone who didn't even run, didn't even get a single vote, would be crazy.
Oh, it would.
She has a much better, still terrible, but better claim of saying, "Hey, I came in second place." So I don't think she drops out until the Supreme Court issues that ruling. So we'll see.
Yeah, she's like hedging her bet on that one, right? I mean, keep spending the money to see if it pays off at the end. I hope it doesn't, right? Because that would just be. Yeah. You want to talk about a reason for people to start revolting? That would be it, right? Like they would.
That's what they're spending the money on.
Ooh.
Yeah. So last episode we talked about these illegal aliens in New York, right? Let's start the ball rolling on the side of the coin of, we're not going to prosecute them. We're going to let them go. They deserve to be let go.
Yeah.
These illegal aliens, we saw the attack. Josh, did you see them leaving the courthouse?
Oh yeah, with the double birds up, just essentially thumbing their nose to all the media.
Into Fox News now, NYPD making two more arrests, illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And that attack on officers. Those suspects also
hide space and throw up the double bird.
Cell phone. Well, that'll help.
Of course.
This is insane. It shows you that they're untouchable in the law.
Yeah.
They're just untouchable, right? They know that nobody's going to come after them.
Yes.
But anybody else goes to jail for 20 years or gets crazy charges.
Yes. Now, New York has passed a law that says they can't hold people with bail. So they have cashless bail. It's been a huge problem in New York, where you rob a store, and unless it's a felony level amount for the merchandise you steal, they get released back into society. So you get people committing multiple crimes before finally the court has the power to put them behind bars, right? What's crazy here is that should have not happened, because illegal aliens, by very virtue of their unlawful entry into the U.S., have proven that they are flight risks. These are people who can move across international borders without needing a plane ticket, right? I mean, it's not even like
paying for it.
For most people, okay, you're a flight risk, hand over your passport. These people are quote unquote undocumented.
Yeah.
So anyone who has proven a history of illegally crossing borders like this should have been treated as a flight risk. Yeah. And lo and behold, they're saying today that they think that these people have already fled the city and state of New York.
Shocking,
right? Shock you. Which is what illegal aliens do. And the way that you really have to think about this is they enter the country illegally, right? Definitely illegally. They seek out Border Patrol agents and they fraudulently claim asylum, that they have a credible fear that they'll be persecuted if they go home. These people are nobodies. They're not revolutionaries. They're not political dissidents. No one cares about these people. Like the powers that be in their countries wouldn't give two shits whether they're inside the country or not. There's no fear of persecution. That's crap.
No.
But until that can be proven to be crap, they are paroled from their previous violation. That doesn't mean that the violation is gone, right? It's still a violation. They're technically, the catch and release is technically a form of parole, pending the outcome of their asylum case. Beating a cop in the streets of New York and getting caught and arrested for it is a flagrant violation of that parole.
Beyond it, if any one of us were to go and kick a bunch of cops on the street, we will go to jail for the next 20 years.
Yes.
At least the charges they'd be able to stack against us would be through the roof.
Yes.
We might get cashless bail, but I wouldn't be permitted to leave anywhere, right? They probably would have left me in jail the whole time.
Yeah, they would claim you were a flight risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And all they have to do is get on a van, make their way south to Florida, because I heard today they love to rob all of New York and then drive to Florida and spend the money because they don't get arrested in New York. That's why they don't steal in Florida, right? So they're multi-state groups. Plus, when they come in, has anybody vetted that they're not part of some sort of gang, a cartel, a small gang, like even a neighborhood gang, right? Like lowest corner of the 13 whatevers, right? Nobody checks, nobody cares, nobody's looking at tattoos. They're not even taking pictures, but they'll take pictures of our tattoos and our people.
They are taking pictures of the tattoos, but the policy is that and I put this in my book, which is coming out hopefully today. I have to fix a formatting issue on it with the margins. Should be coming out today. Definitely, if you're not watching this live, it will be out this evening. Their policy is that if someone shows up with a tattoo that says MS-13 on it, literally, if it literally says that, you can't presume that they're an MS-13 member.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Who came up with an idea that maybe this person is an MS-13 member? Is it crazy to think?
And it got abused a little bit. It got abused a little bit because I don't want to call it abuse. It's called erring on the side of frickin' caution. So what they were doing is if you showed up across the border and you were wearing, let's say, blue and white clothing, well, that is the colors for MS-13. It's like Crips versus the Bloods. They have a uniform, right? Sure. If you are arrested in downtown LA committing a crime and they find a red handkerchief in your pocket, they assume that you are a Blood. If they find a blue handkerchief, they assume that you are a Crip. At the border, if you get apprehended and you have that paraphernalia, that allegiance, that little uniform, they're not allowed to make those assumptions. They're not allowed to. Because
that's the dumbest thing ever.
I know. The assumptions justify deportation, right? So, like, they can't just assume that you are a gang member and throw you in prison for a sentence. They have to have a trial, right? So for the criminal charges for being a gang member, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. For deportation, they don't. Technically, it just has to be suspicion. Because at the end of the day, if this person is a gang member, you can't risk letting them out until their trial, right? You err on the side of caution. But no, with these they never should have been released from jail. New York should have said, if New York was like a really like fair place and just place that feared for its own citizen safety, they would have said that you have already been paroled on a federal offense.
Yeah.
We believe that you are a flight risk. We're going to hold you. Or they would have called ICE And ICE would have been sitting at the courthouse to arrest them while they're walking back, flipping the birds. That's what Trump used to do.
That's what needs to happen. Wow. When did it all just go to hell? When did it all change?
Yeah. And with this one, you wouldn't even need the phone call from the police to ICE because the reporters were there. The reporters knew that they were coming. This was a high-profile case. You knew from the very start that they were illegal aliens. There's no reason why ICE was not there. There's zero reason.
Unless
except
they
for the fact,
invited.
No, they don't have to be invited. Because they can find out. Like the media wasn't invited.
And they could just arrest.
You know what I
mean? Yeah, their jurisdiction would allow them to move in and make the arrest.
Yes. On the charge of violating the parole. How did they violate that technical parole? By beating a police officer in the streets.
As a group.
Right?
Which is premeditated, it feels like, in some way.
Yeah.
So either they weren't, quote, invited, or they just didn't show up.
Yes.
Or they were ordered not to.
Or they're not allowed to show up.
Yeah.
That is what I suspect is the case.
Yeah.
I suspect that Joe Biden took a hatchet to Donald Trump's policies, requiring that they show up anytime they know about someone.
Sure.
Because that was the policy. Like whether or not the state or local police department will pick up the phone and make that call, you don't have to. I guarantee the police didn't call Fox News telling them to be there. Fox News, their cameraman, knew it was happening, did the research. There's no reason why ICE can't do the same research. Unless it is a matter of policy not to apprehend illegal aliens leaving courthouses. Courthouses apparently are off limits. So that's what I believe happened.
Unbelievable.
And now they're gone. Now they're gone.
And you may never find them again. The only time you will find them is when they're involved in another incident, right? What happens if these group of guys kick another cop to death, right, in another place? And then was it worth it? I mean, that guy wouldn't have died in the first place if they just hadn't been here.
Yes.
And that's the craziest part about the whole thing is that we're just letting these unknown, undocumented, unvetted people walk across our country. And Max, if you have, say, 20 million people that cross into the U.S. and only 10% of them want to fight you as an army, that's a monstrous army.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 1%'s a lot of people.
Yeah. Just
deciding to try to take things over, right?
Yeah.
So what makes us think they won't?
Yeah. No, there's something you said on the podcast. I don't know if it's something you say often, but it's something I like to attribute because it makes so much sense. When people tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
So it is ridiculously naive to believe that everyone illegally crossing the border does so with the best intentions, right? It's stupid. Yeah. It's stupid to believe that. But if you are going to be stupid and believe that, when those same people prove that they don't have good intentions, prove that they're going to form a mob and beat 2 police officers in the street, believe them. Don't keep giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
You believe them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now we're in a situation where people have crossed the border. I mean, that looked like gang activity, right? I don't believe that completely. In between when they crossed the border and when they got to New York City, they learned all the things you have to learn and believe to form a posse, basically, and beat police officers. That was in them before that.
Yeah.
Right? So now they're free. Now they're free to roam. They're free to roam. Whether the FBI will look for them, I doubt it.
No.
Absolutely doubt it.
No.
But you know who the FBI is going after?
Teachers,
pro-life protesters.
Oh.
Who had the audacity to sit Indian style outside of an abortion facility and sing hymns. Let's listen to this. Have mercy, Lord. Christ, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Have mercy, Lord.
Terrorists.
Terrible stuff. Terrorists, right?
They're terrorists. I mean, they're practically burning the thing down. You know, I'm sure I'm sure they're going to drive their car into the place next. I mean, they look like a danger. Clear and present.
This is the part that really will piss you off, will piss people off.
That's what I need on Friday.
There's a federal statute. It's called the FACE Act. I write about it in my other book, but it's a law that exists from a time when Roe versus Wade was actually the law of the land. It is a law that I'll throw it up on the screen, but basically what the law says is because women have the right to an abortion, it is a crime to interfere with them exercising that right. Now, what pro-life scholars have been arguing in court, and the courts don't want to listen to it, is that in a world where there is no federal right to have an abortion, why is it still a felony punishable by 11 years in prison?
Felony.
Yes. Punishable by up to 11 years in prison to interfere with something that the Supreme Court has said is not a right. Because the situation you had where you had competing rights, right? You had the First Amendment, which says you're allowed to protest. And you had the Supreme Court saying you had the right to have an abortion. And what the federal government said is, in our opinion, the abortion rights should be prioritized. So your First Amendment right takes a back seat to them exercising their rights. That's interest balancing, right? But in a world where there is no federal right to have an abortion, all this statute is criminalizing First Amendment activity. That's all it is at this point. So go ahead.
Well, what happens when we see a bunch of pro-choice people out in front of churches threatening to burn them down and threatening the people that go to church for their beliefs? That should fall under the same law.
If it's a pro-life pregnancy center, it can. But the problem is the FBI doesn't do that. Like, there's a pro-life pregnancy center in upstate New York that was very publicly
vandalized.
Arsonists trying to take it down, right? The FBI demanded that the pregnancy center hand over, it's Compass Care in New York, demanded that Compass Care hand over their security footage and then did nothing with it. Sat on it for months and then said, oh, well, it's been months. There's nothing we can do. And when Compass Care said, okay, well, give us the footage back, we're going to have our own investigators look at it, they refused to give the footage back.
Whoa.
Yes. So that's the problem with this. It's very obvious that a law that's supposed to protect both sides is really only being used to criminalize. And like, until this past year, no one had ever been charged under the FACE Act for doing anything to a pro-life pregnancy center. It's
really
they started going after the people they could only because of the flagrant hypocrisy of taking the statute and using it to try and imprison as many conservatives as possible. You got to at least pretend to be fair.
Max, they've gotten rid of, they've shown that is not the case. There's no right to it. So everybody who is charged with a felony and prosecuted should be freed immediately and their whole lives made right and whole again.
Mm-hmm.
So why hasn't that happened?
I don't know.
There's no justice under the law anymore.
Here's what the statute says. The freedom of access to clinic entrances. It makes it a crime for a person to, by force or threat of force, or by physical obstruction, intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person because that person is or has been, or in order to intimidate such person or any other person or any class of person from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. So the way it's written, very confusing. It makes it seem like it's by force or threat of force, but technically it's by force or threat of force or physical obstruction. So basically, those people, we just showed them on the ground. I'll pause it right here. They're God-loving people, so they're not doing anything wrong. They're sitting there praying, right? Technically, the charge is the same if they sit there praying as it would be if they beat the hell out of women trying to get into the clinic.
Wow.
The charge is the same.
Obstruction could mean anything. You could put a cardboard box in front of the door and write pro-life on it, and you're committing a felony. At what point did we fall into madness?
Because they have to step over it. the pro-life movement has done some stuff that if it was any other industry would be probably called a prank, or at the very least like mischief, right? They take super glue and they'll super glue the lock so you can't unlock the door. And you have to call, it's not nice, right? And it's criminal mischief to do that, to stop a business from opening. But is it a felony punishable by up to 11 years in prison? Probably no, because the Supreme Court no longer recognizes a right to get an abortion. So the real question here is, can the federal government so heavy-handedly punish you for a First Amendment protected activity because they think the going into the abortion facility is more important? Now, when they're competing rights, the courts have said yes. What hasn't been answered is whether they can interest balance your right to free speech away to protect something that isn't a right. Is that it's confusing? Am I making sense?
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen is if they say yes, then none of your rights would ever be able to be applied again for anything.
Anything. Ever. Take away for any purposes.
Right. So they would effectively be destroying the First Amendment of our Constitution, right?
Yes.
That would be gone. And then everything after that begins to fall like a domino, because you go after the first one, then you go after the second one, which they've been doing for 20, 30 years, right? They are weaponizing your freedoms against you. That's disgusting. Yes. I mean, that is repugnant. They should be replaced. It should be gone.
Well, that right there, sorry, I'm a little glitchy. That right there shows you the different priorities in the Biden administration. You can be an illegal alien who enters the country, and the Biden administration defers, says, no, well, he's just an asylum seeker.
It's okay.
They let him go. You can be caught quite literally beating police officers. You know how dumb you have to be to wail on police officers? Like, that's the dumbest thing you can do. Pick a fight with literally anyone else. What happens then? He gets released, not reapprehended, allowed to disappear. Well, at least now they have his fingerprints.
Yeah.
Right? That is okay. Go out amongst the community. The Biden administration, as a matter of policy, is okay with the illegal aliens who beat police officers living among us. What the Biden administration is not okay with is pro-life protesters sitting in a hallway singing gospel hymns. That, to them, felony, punishable by up to 11 years in prison. Wailing on a cop and filing a fraudulent asylum claim and violating the terms of your parole, go for it. No big deal.
This is an actual direct attack on our representative republic. It's a direct attack on people. It's a direct attack on citizens of the United States. And the government loves to prop up these illegal aliens. Obviously, they want their vote later, but Max, this changes all kinds of things. What cop would ever want to try to arrest this group again? When an organized group is going after the police, that sends a message, right? The very things that keep you safe, we're going to destroy.
Yes.
And that's what they're doing. And the Biden administration doesn't care. This is all dim run. Oh.
And just so we're clear, this video of illegal aliens jumping on, kicking, beating a police officer, right? And the image of that illegal alien walking free, flipping off the cameras and disappearing came just a day after the feds secured a sentence of more than 6 years for a man at January 6th who blindside tackled a Capitol officer. Now, I'm not supporting that. I'm not endorsing that. Obviously, you can't tackle police officers. It's a crime. But I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that the federal government, the DOJ, was presented with 2 cases of people who quite literally were proven tackling and attacking police officers. And the only one who they got up off of their asses to put in prison was the conservative. The illegal aliens who were caught doing that just got allowed to walk free and disappear into society. So I'm not saying that the conservative guy, January 6th guy, shouldn't be in there. I'm not saying that. Just trying to understand how we can live in a country where only one side of the aisle gets punished for something like that. Very publicly, very obviously, only one side is getting punished for something like that.
The DOJ only goes after its enemies. There is no equal application of the law for anyone anymore. justice is not blind. It has got a very evil left eye that's looking for every conservative that's out there, and they're willing to tarnish their reputation and attack our way of life altogether, just so they could go after their political enemies.
Yes.
Why are we allowing this to continue?
Yes. Yes.
Why haven't you listener out there? Why haven't you done something about it?
Because the minute you get up and do anything, they say, "Oh, you're
criminal.
You're resisting. You're insurrection." Right? It's the same reason states are trying to ban militias. They're not doing that out of love. They're doing it because they expect to be doing something in the coming weeks, months, years that they fear you might want to resist. So you make people afraid enough of resisting. That's all. That's why they went so heavy-handed on January 6th. It's very obvious that the people involved in January 6th are not the threat to America that the Biden administration has argued in court. Right? It's very clear that they are not, because when you read these hearings, just lost a.
It happens all the time. Just keep going. You're fine.
There we go. When you read these court cases, what they're saying is that the reason these January 6ers have to stay in prison is because if you let them out, there's a fear that they're going to try and storm the Capitol again. That's the legal, logical basis that they're using to keep these people locked up for years without trial, right? Which is obviously not true. No one's tried to get into the Capitol again, other than Democrats. It's very obvious they're not going to storm the Capitol peacefully without arms a second time. Are you insane? But that's the logic that they use. That's the logic that they use. And we've seen a lot of situations like this in the last couple of years where it feels like there's two different sets of legal systems.
Yeah.
I don't call it the justice system anymore because it's very clearly not about getting justice. It's the legal system. What can they legally get away with? Justice has nothing to do with it anymore. You remember this case? You remember those lawyers in the Black Lives Matter riots in New York City? There were two lawyers, not illegal alien minors, two lawyers who were quite literally caught firebombing a police car. They got 1 year and 1 day in prison.
30 grand for the fine?
And 30 grand. Now, look at some of the, like the guy who tackled the Capitol police officer. We just showed it.
6 years.
He got over 6 years. So the act of tackling a cop to the ground is 6 years. But the act of throwing like a Molotov cocktail in a cruiser trying to kill everyone inside, that's 1 year. Do you understand how this doesn't freaking make sense? And they went after Rudy Giuliani's law license faster than they went after the firebombers' law licenses.
And
how does that make sense?
And it's in everybody's face, but nobody knows. Like, do people even know this stuff anymore, Max? I mean, that's why we're here telling them, but no one else reports it. No one else brings up these things. There's no other place where you can, if you put in a Google search for something, all that comes up is these poor immigrants had to resist themselves against the police, right? Or there's so many problems they face. And it just doesn't make sense. It's like somebody's turned the whole world on its head. Yeah. And we're just supposed to accept it. We're just supposed to believe that if we decide to revolt or rebel, that we're going to be destroyed for it. And they're just assuming we're the bad guys. How much rhetoric comes out of the Biden White House where they say that everything that conservatives or MAGA people are going to do is going to destroy the democracy?
Yes.
I mean, we hear it every day. So they're lining up against us in the law system. They're lining up against us in the media, and they're lining up against us at the highest political levels. I mean, what is there left to do? I mean, we can't win fair elections anymore. Like I said, Biden wins this. Whoever the Dem is wins this one. And that's what's going to cause like real problems for everybody in the U.S. Like they're going to see for the first time that it's not legitimate. But we'll be labeled as conspiracy theorists, liars again, right? And they'll just continue the attacks until there's some sort of come to head moment. And I think that's what they want.
Remember this guy?
Oh, the foot guy. He was in the Senate office. Yeah.
Richard Barnett. He had the audacity. Again, don't do it. Don't break into the Capitol and put your feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. He had the audacity to put his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. And in doing so, earned a 4-year prison sentence. for what was actually called basically misconduct in the House of Representatives, in the Capitol building. Like that, when you start looking at it, the actual the charges that he's facing, civil disorder. Like he was disorderly in the Capitol building when he put those feet up on, it was ruffled through papers, fine. He put the feet up on the Capitol building, on the Capitol desk. Nancy Pelosi, yes, it's too disorderly. He gets 4 years. But the man who filmed gay sex scenes in the Senate hearing room will face no charges because police have concluded they can't find evidence of a crime. They can't find evidence of the crime, even though he posted evidence of the crime. That seems awfully disorderly.
And the conduct is horrible. I don't care if it's gay or straight sex act.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do those things in the people's house. There's a level of decorum. And if you're not following the level of decorum, isn't that disorder? So therefore, he should be charged for the same crime. I mean, this is a sex act, which is disgusting, versus some guy putting his feet up on a desk. I don't know. I feel like it's the people's house. You should be able to walk in there and put your feet up on the desk if you want to, but what? I think, I remember when that story came out, I was like, this can't be true, right? Because some guy just goes in there and does the butt stuff video, and it's okay, right? Nobody cares. Nobody bats an eye. It barely goes through the media cycles for a week.
Yeah.
But yet January 6th is all we can hear about. All those evil people out there that were being disorderly, who were knocking over. Like if you walked in if you had walked in and knocked over one of the rope holders, would that have been disorderly conduct, right? I mean, what is the level of disorderly conduct?
Well, you want to know how ridiculous this is, right? So this guy, Richard Barnett, he's charged with unlawfully entering or remaining in a restricted building. I have to believe that as a term of his permission to be in the Senate, a little ID card, like there's things you can do,
right?
I have to believe staying behind and waiting for everyone to go home so you could have butt sex in the Senate hearing room isn't part of his job description.
No.
Did he unlawfully remain in the Senate building after hours? I think you could probably make an argument for that. Was it disorderly or disruptive conduct in such a restrictive building? It might not have been at the moment if no one's there, but they filmed it and they put it online, which adds a whole other element to that crime beyond just the inconvenience it might have caused anyone there in the moment. The problem becomes with the fact that the feet up on the desk guy, he was charged, and the crime he was charged with only is triggered if there's a, quote, civil disorder. And a civil disorder is a public disturbance involving acts committed by 3 or more persons.
Unbelievable.
In which it might cause a danger or damage or injury to property or persons. So if this gay guy, Senate staffer, if he had a threesome instead of
total crime,
you could actually make the argument, but because it wasn't a formal train and it was just 2 guys,
right? It was just 2 cabooses.
Yeah, just 2 cabooses. There's no cars in between.
Yeah.
Because of that, technically that crime can't even be stretched to apply.
Hold on.
See how ridiculous this is?
Yeah. Well, were there 3 people there? I mean, couldn't the person who was running the camera be that third party?
I think
I don't know much about the video. I never watched it.
Here's the thing, though. The FBI says both have refused to communicate, so we don't have any more information.
They can't bring them down and try to turn their knuckles or anything? I mean, just...
Where are the 6 a.m. early morning raids at gunpoint?
Yeah, right.
Where are they?
Where's the public spectacle? Was CNN there with their cameras when they went to go make that arrest? Did somebody make that phone call?
Yep.
So, wow.
Why aren't they raiding their home, taking all of their phones and computers to see if they have confessed to other people? That's what they did to the Trump supporters.
Yeah.
You see, it's 2 different levels. It's 2 different levels of law enforcement. That's very obviously being guided through a political lens. This guy's a Democrat staffer. He's gay. Being gay is a protected class. So you can't even create the appearance so that you're going after him because of his gayness, which you shouldn't. If anyone filmed a porno in the Senate hearing room, they should be prosecuted for it.
I'm angry if anybody did it. I don't care who it is. Race, creed, color, orientation, doesn't matter.
Like, if they did it to potentially sell it or put it on an OnlyFans where they could get money for it, right? That's a whole other level of the crime. Like, right there, I mean, it's misappropriation of government resources. You know what I mean? Like,
it has to be, yeah.
If you wanted to throw the book at these people, you literally could. But that's the thing. They don't want to. If you listen to, and I'll let you chime in. This is the bit from the FBI, the Capitol Police, right? Basically saying that he's resigned his job, and that's basically punishment enough. And it won't happen again. He's resigned his job. Go ahead. I'll let you chime in. I've been ranting.
Could you imagine the look? Like, all they care about the optics, right? If they were to go after somebody who's their protected class and their base voter and to charge them, their side would lose their minds, right? They would. There would be hoopla, there would be big uproar, there would be all this protection for it. So the administration can't be seen as being hard on those kind of crimes for their side, but they have no problem being hard for the other side, right? Because that optic looks good. I mean, O'Keefe just had that major breaking video with that guy who was interior of the White House. And he says all those things, right? He's like, they just can't be seen not liking a certain group or, getting rid of Kamala because you can't get rid of a black woman, right? Because it wouldn't look good. They care more about what looks good for them than what the actual freaking law is. That's just, that causes irritation in me. Irritation.
So I didn't think I was going to dive down this rabbit hole, but let's dive down the rabbit hole. We're here. We're already in the muck. We're already talking about it.
We got the gloves on.
Yeah. Here's the crime. District of Columbia, Section 22-1312. Lewd, indecent, or obscene acts. Also, sexual proposal to a minor, two different things. It is unlawful for a person in public to make an obscene or indecent exposure of his or her genitalia or anus, or engage in masturbation, or to engage in a sexual act as defined by this statute. That was a sex act.
Yeah.
So the question is whether the people's house, public property,
has to be,
whether that is in public.
Has to be, because we all own it. It's considered a public space.
It is not his house. No. It is not a hotel.
Nope.
Generally, if you were to get caught having sex in a public building like this is the statute that would be applied to you.
Applied to you, yeah.
Even if you were to get caught in a private building that you didn't have permission to be in, because the in public is everyone else around you, right?
Yeah.
It's unless what you're doing, you have a reasonable expectation that no one's going to walk in on it, you can make the argument that you just did it in public. If you have to worry that someone else could see you do it, right? Which you can get charged with this if you're being intimate with your partner and you deliberately open the blinds. You know what I mean? Like you could get charged with these kinds of statutes.
Sure, they look in the car window, right? That happens all the time.
Yes, this is the statute that would be applied to someone hooking up in a car.
Wow.
Even though the car could reasonably be said as your domicile, right. Doesn't matter. Private. It doesn't matter if it's private. It's close enough. Yeah. Well, I would venture to say that the Senate hearing room is close enough. It's close enough.
And the thing is, Max, is I got to imagine this is amongst some of the most watched rooms that are out there.
Yeah.
I got to imagine there's cameras everywhere.
It's a dedicated C-SPAN camera.
Everywhere. Like, everybody could see this going on. So there's plenty of evidence, right? There should be
another standard
of it.
Here's another standard. If you're having sex somewhere and one person pushing one button would broadcast that sex act to the entire country on C-SPAN 1 or 2, you're in public. Let's just be fair, right?
You'd be violating so many other laws.
And why is C-SPAN's cameras in there? Because it's the public's house. It's the people's house.
Right.
It is very funny. It is very funny talking about this and seeing people hop on, realize that we're talking about this, and I don't want to watch this. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it either.
But it's gotta happen.
The point isn't to get bogged down in it. The point is to show you how flagrant and how disgusting the two different legal systems are that have been created in this country. I'm not saying that anyone should have sex in the Senate office building, Senate hearing room. No, of course not. Like, decent, reasonable people wouldn't do that. But then again, understand that the policymakers who signed off on this decision not to charge him, are the same people who are actively encouraging lewd behavior in the streets. Right? I mean, like these are the same people who would be at the gay pride parade clapping and cheering on debauchery.
Right.
Right? So it isn't just that they don't want to prosecute it. There's an element of the left that doesn't think there was anything wrong with this. That even if it's not a matter of whether they can technically charge it. They say this is beautiful. They say this is wonderful.
Right. Unbelievable. And then they promote it and they want that stuff, right? I mean, it's total perversions of the system. It's total perversions. This is the kind of stuff. Somebody asked me the other day, Josh, are we living, will we live in a dystopia, right? Will we have some sort of apocalyptic dystopia that we're living in and things are just going to be strange? And I argued to him, I was like, you already do. You know what I mean? In a dystopia, there's uneven law. There's special classes. There's special people, right? There's special things you can do out there to make sure that you don't get attacked by the law. They will embrace you for it. And they will find your enemies for you, and then we'll go after them. Tell me we don't live in a dystopia now. Except there's no desert out there, and I still get to shop at Walmart, right?
Tell me we don't live in a dystopia. Donald Trump is facing criminal charges for mishandling, allegedly, classified documents. And in his defense, he has argued, among the other defenses, that there is a certain level of presidential immunity. Yes. That the president conducting himself in the normal way that presidents would conduct themselves can't be criminalized, can't turn that into a fine. That's the one hand. On the other hand, the DOJ FBI has literally caught Joe Biden doing the same thing, unlawfully storing classified documents in his garage.
Right. Not even under lock and key.
So when Donald Trump says, I deserve presidential immunity, the DOJ says there is no such thing as presidential immunity. But when they catch Joe Biden doing the same thing, they say we cannot prosecute him. Why can't they prosecute him, Josh?
Well, they got to have that difference under the law. I mean, it's
presidential immunity. But like, we can't indict him. He's a president. Well, what is the basis of that argument stretching all the way back to the Watergate era? That there's a certain element of presidential immunity, and you can't lock a president up for doing something that is part of being president. You know what I mean? Like,
you would have locked up every president since Nixon.
Yeah, they have. Well, but that's the whole thing, right? Like, every president does things that the courts eventually rule are unconstitutional. And I'm not embracing that, right? But presidents will push the envelope and say, you know what? I've read this law. That's what they're saying. I read this law and I interpret this law to protect me doing this. I'm going to do it. Other side challenges, sues, goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, no, bad precedent. That was unconstitutional. The president then doesn't go to prison. Like that's the difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What the DOJ is trying to do to Trump is saying, you were president. You did something that after reading the law said it was permissible, believed it was permissible. We disagree, but instead of suing you the way we do for every other president, we're going to charge you criminally after the fact. Right. Do you see how there's a difference?
Yeah. And now the Supreme Court has to decide now, right? The power becomes the judiciary's power to determine whether a president can or cannot be charged, right? And that's what's on the table.
Yes.
Because if that's the case, Joe Biden should be charged for a lot of things, right? Yes. There will be things that'll come out. He'll probably be dead by the time they figure it out, like 10 years down the road, right? Because it's on the verge now. But what are they going to arrest him? They'll never do it. They'll just never do it. They'll never find the reason.
Here's the hypothetical. Joe Biden is in suppose he's in Texas.
Sure.
When he travels, basically travels with a mobile command center. He can deliver combat orders anywhere on the planet with him. Not just the nuclear football, just the ability to relay orders. While he is in the state of Texas, he orders a drone strike against an American overseas who may or may not be working with the terrorists. Now, this is something Obama really enjoyed doing. But in this hypothetical, remember, he makes the order from inside Texas. Normally, if someone took offense to it, like the state of Texas, they would sue in federal court to get it to stop. But what Biden and his DOJ are trying to open the door for would be for Texas prosecutors to arrest and charge him with murder.
That'd be wild. That would be way too much power for the state to have over the executive.
I know. They're doing it in Georgia, too. Donald Trump picked up the phone and talked to the Secretary of State and said, we're seeing fraud here. And he's throwing numbers around that are being given to him off the cuff. And now after the fact, they're saying, oh, well, that conversation, that was lying on a federal form. Doesn't matter, it wasn't paperwork. You lied to a state official. That is a crime. Now, Joe Biden could call up a state official and talk out of his ass, and nothing would happen to him. But because it's Trump, it's different.
So what happens if Joe Biden's giving a speech somewhere and he starts rattling off a bunch of numbers that aren't true about something, and a state official is there listening to this during a speech? Would that also apply at that point? Because he can't get numbers like it's 100 million, billion, trillion, 100,000 new jobs, right?
He does it all the time. He does it all the time. Let's imagine you're in Michigan, because he was just in Michigan. He's there with Gretchen Whitmer, and imagine he stands up, and he's said this before, so it's not a stretch. He gets up and he says that there have been 300 million gun deaths last year.
Yeah.
He says it all the time. He basically says that everyone in America was just shot and killed.
Yes.
He gets the number flagrantly wrong. It's dumb. If Gretchen Whitmer is in attendance and she hears that, and she goes back to her staff and says, we need to pass gun control right now, and she does it, you could argue that he did the same thing that Donald Trump is being accused of doing. Except in his case, he would have actually affected an outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's safe to say that the governor and Secretary of State in Georgia were just want to get off that call. They're no friends of Trump. They don't want to help him.
Yeah.
They weren't going to listen to him no matter what he said.
Right. I think a lot of them took the call knowing that might have been the plan. I mean, to do these things, you'd have to have a plan in place before those calls were made, because you just couldn't go after the fact and find it. That would take so much research. You'd have to really spend time discovering, right? There just wouldn't have been the time needed during the last election cycle, right?
And never forget that the Georgia, it was either the governor's office or the Secretary of State's office, leaked this detail to the press to damage Trump. The only reason there was ever an indictment of Trump for this phone call in Georgia is because the other people on the phone call very publicly and very deliberately told the world that it happened. In any other case, without there being a recording, it would have been a he said, she said. But the only reason it was even on the prosecutor's radar is because they very deliberately, very intentionally wanted the world to know that Trump had said these things.
What a setup. So the witch hunt, he always said it was a setup. It's true. I mean, it has to be true. We see the evidence every day of it. But again, that was a conspiracy. Remember when you were labeled a liar for that by fact checkers? I mean, there was times Snopes went after you and that other guy about the stuff that was said, right?
Mainly me.
I mean, mainly you.
The other guy too.
But you made the claim a long time ago. You were labeled as something other. I mean, we had problems on YouTube because of it. Remember that?
To this day, I still find it very funny that when the other guy, we don't have to pretend he's not Voldemort.
Yeah.
Joe Altman. He must not be named. When he still gets written about, I sometimes get little bits into the article as like a former co-host whenever they talk about things he said back then. And they sometimes will throw little blurbs in at me to say that I'm racist.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the article once, and I I click on it, say, I'm racist. That's news to me. And I click on it because they make claims and they hide them in the hyperlink. And the only way you can see what they mean is by clicking the hyperlink. And it's usually pretty big departure. Click on the hyperlink. And they took offense to me making fun of Lori Lightfoot.
Was that when you put the Beetlejuice picture up?
Yes. And I just want to make it absolutely clear. My criticism of Lori Lightfoot has absolutely nothing to do with her race. No. It has absolutely nothing to do with her gender. It had, at the time, I took great offense to her policies and found it moderately amusing that with a very small amount of Photoshop, you could quite literally make her look like Beetlejuice.
We all laughed that day. You, me, Joe. We were just
and
laughing.
I am not the only one to make this comparison. For the record, I typed in Lori Lightfoot Beetlejuice into Google, and this showed up. And I didn't make this.
Oh, those are the
But to this day, I'm in articles where they say that I'm denigrating to African Americans. When no, it was to one person. And it has nothing to do with their skin color, has everything to do with the sunken eyes and almost electrocuted hair.
Yeah, and like the high brow line. I mean, poor thing. She obviously was not getting much sleep at that time.
But it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh that people think that they can. But the problem is they put that out there, and unless someone's willing to do the 2 or 3 clicks it takes to get to what the actual accusation against me is, they read it without clicking. They say Max McGuire who has a history of being denigrating to black women. No, it's one.
Right.
One. It has nothing to do with her race at all. She could pass. She could pass.
She could like that would be the ultimate costume for her at Halloween, right? So just a little bit of effort. And Beetlejuice 2 will be coming out.
What is she? She was like the vaccine fairy. What does she do?
What does she do now? Oh, I don't know. Like,
what was her? It was like
fame?
No, her Halloween costume. It was like,
oh yeah, she went with something crazy.
Stupid.
Remember, like that? Yeah, that's why I was talking about the Halloween thing, right?
Yeah, she went as Bleach Woman.
That's right. Which was and the hand sanitizer next to it.
Yeah. Yeah. But Trump is accused of telling people to drink bleach just by off the cuff talking about medical studies that use disinfectants, aerosolized disinfectants. He said, "Oh no, Trump wants you to drink bleach when you have Bleach Girl
standing there in her cape and a mask. Don't forget the mask. God, I miss the masks. It was good times there.
I'm glad we're not wearing them, and that it isn't required to wear them, because when you find the people who still are wearing them, you can just immediately write them off as having anything interesting to say.
Yeah.
Here in Texas, I'm still encountering every now and then people double masking, and it is the funniest thing ever.
Hey, I went into a Home Depot. This was back when we were on Conservative Daily, and this lady saw me without a mask, so she pulled one out of her pocket and she threw it at me, like at my chest, and it bounced off me. And she just stood there staring at me, like waiting for me to do something. And I was like genuinely angry, but I just kept on walking. That's what I got.
Funniest experience I had was I had the audacity to turn down an aisle and not listen to the little arrows that they had taped to the floor.
Yeah.
Because that's not real. That's not real. Like, you can't just make an aisle one way. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's
the look of horror on this woman's face.
Right.
As she saw me turn that corner and walk towards her instead of behind her.
Yeah.
You would have thought I was Freddy Krueger or Jason with a machete.
Right.
About to murder the whole summer camp of kids.
Right.
She ran faster than the kids run in the horror movies away. She just sprinted. I was like, all right. Out of myself.
The hardest thing about COVID was that we found a way to hate each other more.
Oh, it wasn't just hating each other.
It was so much.
There was polling where Democrats wanted conservatives to be sent to re-education camps. That was on the agenda in the New York legislature. It wasn't just that we learned to hate each other. It revealed hatred. And same thing. When people tell you who they are, believe them. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't mean it.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Any final words?
Oh, man. I've said this before. I've said it again. The government thinks that it is something different than you now.
Yeah.
And if they think they're something different than you, that means they expect you to serve them or they serve you. But you know which way it's going. You serve the government now. You no longer have the freedom you have. You live like a slave. We do.
Yeah, we very much do. Well, that's it for this edition of the podcast. One thing I will say, my next book will be out in the next 24 hours. So by the time you watch this, it'll probably be available. I thought I could have hit publish before we went on, but one of my margins is too small. So that's going to be fun. Reshaping, resizing the entire thing. That's going to be fun. But next book coming out, Conservatives' Guide to Winning Every Immigration Argument, will be out in the next 24 hours. Do check that out. Now's the time to read it.
Yes.
It's very important stuff. And then when that happens, I have to figure out how to make a nice little box set
to put them together.
Of 3.
Hey, how long do you think it's going to take before you get them in universities?
I gotta find someone who wants to assign it. That'd be funny.
Wouldn't that be funny?
I bet you out there somewhere
you could do it.
There is a political science guy at a community college level who'd be willing to do it.
Let's find out.
Hey, if anyone knows anyone, right into the show.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. That'd be like the long con if I just get a job at a professor. Because that's what the professors at a university, that's what the professors do. They write the books and then they force people to buy the books and they make money on it.
You would be fired so fast.
It'd be pretty funny.
Like, you have no idea. Yeah. You would be fired so fast. You'd show up, teach one class, and you're gone. That's what they do to you.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah, probably.
You'd open your mouth and you'd be like, no, that was stupid. You'd be in front of the dean in one day.
Yeah. But the fun little fact is that when this book does come out, the newest footnote will be February 1st. So I try to make it as up to date, fresh as possible because things are changing. Well, that's it for this podcast. If you like the podcast, make sure you subscribe. Links are in the description. Subscribe. Comment. We'll be back on Monday with more content. So tune in for that. That's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
I am Josh Hammerling.
Remember, everyone, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all step and fight together. Have a good weekend.
See ya.